Welcome to our second Neighborhood Services HOA Academy. So happy to have you here today, and our firm is so happy to be partnering with the neighborhood service departments from Avondale, Chandler, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Surprise, Tempe, and the town of Queen Creek. Together, all of these cities, towns have come together to provide this valuable programming to HOA and condo board members, homeowners that live in HOAs and condos, community managers, so that we can still be meeting and having our questions answered and provide information to, these different groups of people during the pandemic when we can't actually meet face-to-face at the facilities like we normally were doing and having in-person classes. So our firm feels very fortunate to be partnered with these different cities to work together to provide free education during the pandemic.
This is Bruce Wall from the City of Scottsdale's Neighborhood College Program. We're all in this together.
The City of Peoria. We're in this together.
The City of Chandler. We're in this together.
Town of Queen Creek. We're in this together.
Hi, this is Jamie from the City of Scottsdale with my daughter Jocelyn. Whether you're working from home or doing kindergarten from home, we want to remind you that we're in this together.
City of Tempe, we are in this together.
So let's just get started out. First, I'd like to introduce myself for those of you who I haven't met before or who haven't attended one of our classes before. My name is Beth Mulcahy, and I'm the managing partner and senior attorney of the Mulcahy Law Firm in Phoenix, Arizona. I have enjoyed practicing in the area of representing homeowners associations and condominiums throughout the state of Arizona for the past 23 years. And I've also served on my association board for many years as well. And so I think I bring kind of a unique perspective to these classes because in addition to my legal training in representing and helping associations with their legal problems, and that could be anything from interpreting their CC&Rs to handling delinquent assessment collection for owners who aren't paying, or if you have owners who are, violating your documents, or just interpretation questions, or if you have litigation, we're here to help our associations that we work with in that capacity. But also, I think I bring a unique perspective in that I've served on my board for over a decade, and I know how challenging it is to be on a board. In fact, I got so burned out the first time I was on the board that I took a 10-year break. And when I started to have children, and then when my kids were about 4 years ago, when my kids were a little bit older, then I started to get more involved in our association. And so I've helped our association just as a board member dig out of a number of different problems as well. So, and I had a brief little stint too where I was a disgruntled homeowner living in an association, and that happened after I was on the board, where I had that 10 years off where I saw things weren't going well, and I was really frustrated. So I think, for the 52 viewers that are watching right now, I'm trying to give you today the best advice possible based upon my professional experience, based upon my experience as a board member, and then also if we have any disgruntled owners who are here today who are unhappy with how their association is being run. I really do understand that too. And I understand how frustrating that can be. So, I'd like to give a very broad perspective here today. Okay, so let's start out with some logistics. In case you missed the first class of our Neighborhood Services HOA Academy, which we had about 2 weeks ago, you can find that video on our firm's website at mulcahylawfirm.com under the videos page. And I think we had over 70 people that listened into that video live. And then we had something I'd have to double check, but at one point we had over 300, possibly even 400 views of it after the presentation, which was awesome. So there's flexibility. Any of these classes that we're teaching on Facebook Live, we tape the video and we put it on our website about a day after the live video is conducted. So if you aren't able to attend one of these live sessions, make sure that you check our webpage for our firm under our videos page. And any presentation that we have given, is listed there now. We've had 12 Facebook Lives now since the pandemic started in March, and I'm just really proud of my team, especially Morgan and Yvonne, who have helped us, choreograph and prepare for these Facebook Lives. And we've had something like 30,000 views of all of our videos, over the past few years. And just in the pandemic alone, over 15,000 views of our videos that we've conducted on the pandemic. So, and helping associations with their questions during the pandemic. So I'm really proud of our team for being out there in the forefront, being leaders, providing free information to, associations that have a lot of questions right now. I'd also like to give a shout out to the wonderful representatives of the neighborhood services from across the valley. Again, we're partnering today with Avondale, Chandler, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Surprise, Tempe, and the town of Queen Creek to provide these classes to the residents in each of these respective cities. So thank you for being leaders as well and getting out there, providing this free information to your residents that live in your respective cities. Let's start out first with a quick little COVID-19 update. Thankfully, it's been kind of quiet for all of us the past few weeks with any big developments on COVID-19. I think we all really need a break after March and April, where it was just constant and never-ending changes, government orders, federal and state orders. So it's been kind of nice to have a little bit of a quiet time right now where we can get a little bit back to normal in our communities. One thing I want to mention that's notable, since the last time we met on Facebook Live a few weeks ago, Governor Ducey issued a news release providing an update on Arizona's unemployment numbers. And why is that important? Or why does this matter to associations? I think that we really need to keep close eye on what's going on in our economy right now, because associations are definitely impacted by that in the near future. And so the unemployment rates are going to provide a glimpse into the overall state of our economy in the state of Arizona. And if people are out of jobs, they may have a hard time paying their mortgage or deed of trust. And that may trickle down to rent if they're renting the property, and then association assessments. And what we found is that when someone gets into financial difficulties, they first stop paying the association assessments before they would ever stop paying their mortgage or their deed of trust. So one little comment that I'll make is that we haven't seen a large uptick in the number of collection files in our office, and we've been checking in with different clients and management companies. So for right now, it appears that the economy is pretty stable and people are still, paying their assessments, and that's probably due to a lot of the different government programs and state programs that are helping, owners may be taking a deferral on paying their mortgage or deed of trust, and renters possibly not having to pay rent. And so I guess what the burning question in our office right now is, when is the other shoe going to drop? I've lived through now in my legal career 3 different downturns in the economy, and so we have a pretty good feeling for the indicators. So we're looking at the number of bankruptcies that are being filed, the number of trustee sales that are being noticed. We're looking at the unemployment numbers, and then we're trying to, anticipate when, the market or the economy is potentially not going to be able to recover, and how that's going to trickle down and affect our associations. So I think kind of the first thing that I would say is, if your board is, preparing your budget right now, make sure that you factor in at least a 5 to 10% delinquency in your 2021 budget, because we think that possibly in the second quarter of 2021, we're going to see a large uptick in the number of owners that stop paying assessments. And we're going to be talking about this on a future Facebook Live for our Neighborhood Services HOA Academy. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But the good news in Arizona is that our unemployment rate is down to 5.9%. I have a little chart that I put up on my wall in my office. And, at one point we were into, mid digits, so like 13-14% unemployment in Arizona in March or April. And so, those numbers have significantly gone down, and actually they're lower than the numbers in some adjoining states like California. So we've also added nearly 80,000 jobs in August, which is a good trend as well. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on this because we want to be able to warn associations that when the downturn is going to be coming, so that you can be really proactive on collecting delinquent assessments right away, so that your bill, your association assessment bill, gets in the to be paid pile for owners as they're determining whether they're going to pay assessments or not. Okay, let's talk a little bit about community spirit and how to build community spirit and maintain communities during the pandemic. I've been reading a ton of articles. I've probably done more reading and listened to more podcasts and different presentations virtually than I ever have in the past, 23 years practicing law during the past 5 months. And so, one of the things that I thought would be helpful to associations is, what could we do to bring our communities together? And we've really seen some heartwarming community spirit over the past few months in our nation as a whole. And it's really helped to bring hope and a sense of togetherness during this truly strange and uncertain time. And so some examples that we saw that we thought were just awesome in March and April were at the outset of the pandemic, communities, joined together, by placing things in their windows and by going outside on their balconies if you live in a condo or in their front yards and street corners to give frontline and other care workers a round of applause. And we saw many images of that on social media, and truly that was really made everybody feel comforted, frankly, during a really uncertain time. But there have also been some great examples in communities that I'd like to share with you today, and maybe some ideas you might want to implement for your community. Some communities have been coming together by making signs and banners to be posted in senior long-term care facilities or cards, and some communities are doing that right now. And there's other examples. Probably my favorite example is a condominium association that decorated the front door of a 90-year-old man who had who had his 90th birthday, and he had planned to travel back to Utah to be with his family, and he was unable to do that. And so this particular board got together and they put balloons and they wrapped up some, disinfecting wipes and put a big bow on them, and they wrote a big sign saying "Happy Birthday, Gene." And these small acts of kindness, especially during challenging times, are the things that really speak volumes about communities. And so I'd encourage you as a board to look for opportunities to get out there and help others in your community, and to encourage others who live in your community, who are residents, to, help each other. So let's give you some ideas that you might want to implement. And I think when we did the brainstorm to prepare for this session today, we started out with just a few things, and then by 10:15 this morning when we were finalizing the script, it was so long that I think we're going to be putting this into a cheat sheet, because truly this is just amazing. There's some great ideas. So likely before the end of next week, I hope Yvonne's listening because she doesn't know that yet, but we're going to be putting this into a cheat sheet, and then we'll be releasing it to help communities. So you'll also get a written form of this in addition to the video form. Okay, so what are some ideas? Well, first, let's start and talk about the different cities and municipalities that are sponsoring or are helping us come together today, and that would be Avondale, Chandler, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Surprise, Tempe, and the town of Queen Creek. The first message I'd like to give you is make sure that you are encouraging your residents in your community to go to the websites for the official websites for these different cities and check out all the cool information that they have posted on their websites that can help you and help your residents with any problem that you might be facing right now. And so, we did a quick scan of them yesterday to prepare for this presentation, but they have online classes, they have assistance programs that are listed, they have information about what information can be available on libraries digitally, just a wealth of great information on food assistance programs, Meals on Wheels. And so I would encourage you as a board to be providing links to these websites so that you can provide information to your residents about all the great programs that these different cities are providing to the residents of their cities to help your residents. And frankly, I get copied on a lot of emails from different cities just because of these classes that we're teaching. But once I got on the website, I couldn't believe how many different amazing programs all of these cities are providing to their residents. And some of them are even financially beneficial, where there's rent assistance programs for landlords and rent assistance programs for tenants. And like I said earlier, Meals on Wheels, educational programs, free university classes. I mean, it's amazing. So I'd like to just give a really big shout out to all these different cities for providing such valuable information to your residents and being there to help them during these challenging times. It's really a great thing. Okay, let's start out with how can boards communicate with their residents during this time? Sending out blast emails, posting things on your community bulletin board, on your website for your association, on social media, if your association has a Facebook page, on Nextdoor. There's so many different ways that you can be communicating these different programs that we're going to be talking about today and providing links to the city that you live in. Well, first, if you're going to be sending out a communication to your residents, please make sure your message is positive. Acknowledge community heroes, maybe a local firefighter or a healthcare worker that has gone the extra mile during these challenging times. Acknowledge someone or something that's being done in your community that is beneficial to the community as a whole. Acknowledge positive neighborhood relationships, maybe neighbors helping neighbors in need or checking in on elderly neighbors. Maybe, offer to be a conduit if you're a homeowner who lives in your association who's in need of something. If anybody needs to have groceries delivered, we might be able to connect you to somebody who might be able to do that. And so just getting a positive message out there, thanking people for working together during this challenging time is a really nice thing to do in your community. Some other things that we've seen that have been kind of fun are friendly photo submission competitions from different associations. Maybe it's cutest pet, who has the best garden. And of course, we know it's been so hot in Arizona, it's going to have to maybe be a rock garden or something that's going to be desert landscaping. But, in November, when we all are able to plant again, that might be something that would be kind of fun to do. Best holiday decorations. We've got Halloween coming up, Thanksgiving, and Christmas and Hanukkah. All of these are different things that you might be able to implement during these holidays. You could also do like a Halloween pumpkin carving contest and have people submit photos. Organizing a trash cleanup day for your community, where volunteers, during a certain period of time, maybe an entire day, have a trash cleanup day to make your community cleaner. One thing that I noticed that Surprise is doing, the city of Surprise, is they're having like a volunteer service day, which I just think is amazing. I just give them so much credit for coming up with that idea and implementing it in the city of Surprise and making it happen so that we can get some community service projects, even when we need to be masked up and being socially distant from others. Maybe have a community food drive. The association where I live had a community food drive in April and May of this year, and we were able to donate over 1,000 canned goods to Feeding America. And I was part of the team that helped deliver all the cans to Feeding America, and they were so appreciative to have that stock of cans to be provided that Saturday at the different food banks. So think about doing something that would be a community project like that, the community cleanup day, having a blood drive possibly in your community. And the blood drives are safe. I gave blood, back in March or April, and it was socially distant and safe. And I know that they're desperately in need of blood right now. So you might want to reach out to the different organizations that provide that. They can bring in the facility and do it all outside. And remind your homeowners to support our local businesses that are in your neighborhood, and just giving them a shout out and maybe telling them what type of things they're offering right now in terms of family pack meals or free delivery. and making sure that our community is able to still maintain those restaurants even after the pandemic is over by supporting them now. Some other fun things that we've seen that associations can communicate about are online workout programs, where residents, maybe it's a local gym or maybe a resident is running a yoga class and they're doing it especially for your association. We've also seen meditation classes that one of my board members is running, providing, information about if somebody is feeling depressed or right now I know is National Suicide Month, having information for your residents to, provide them with comfort and to help them. This is the time to do it. So if your association has a newsletter or you're sending out emails, providing that information is great. There's an association, a very large association in the West Valley of Arizona, or Phoenix, who has been especially outstanding. I get their newsletter that they send out at least twice a week, and they always say at the end of the newsletter, if you know of somebody in need, reach out to them. If you're going to Costco, send them a text or an email and say, hey, I'm going to Costco. Do you need anything? That's what being a neighbor is all about. And so I just love seeing that. That makes me really happy. Okay, a couple other things, some other ideas for building community spirit. Of course, you should be using, virtual meetings right now for your board to meet and your committees to meet. We are not advising our clients to meet in person at this time, especially because most of our clients are at risk due to their ages. And many of the communities that we represent are 55 and over communities, and many of the board members are over age 55. So what are some fun things that you can do as a community by a virtual meeting? Well, Zoom is a wonderful platform. We've been using that, for attendance at board meetings and annual meetings, and helping boards and run their annual meeting and regular meetings by using Zoom. But some associations are having Zoom happy hours with the neighbors, which are super fun. Or maybe they're having a socially distanced happy hour, with not more than 10 people at the pool, everybody wearing masks and being social distant. Maybe have an interesting speaker address your community. I know that my particular association that I live in, we're having a Zoom forum with all of the city council candidates that are running for city council. And, that's a great idea because it's tailored specifically to an association and the special needs that your association may have. And it's a great way for the candidates to get out there and campaign. So you may want to be thinking about putting that together. And it's really easy to do. Our association basically put it together in the past week. Or maybe have a representative of the police department give an update on crime in your neighborhood on a Zoom talk. Or have somebody give a cooking lesson if they have, special skills in cooking or any other special skills in your association. Again, just trying to find an interesting speaker to come in and to provide a sense of community to your neighborhood is just a wonderful idea. Okay, let's talk about exterior decorations. So pre-pandemic, I think most boards were pretty strict about exterior decorations. They wanted people, if they did do decorations, they needed to be taken down in a timely fashion. And we noticed at the beginning of the pandemic, some homeowners, even though it was March, were putting up Christmas lights as a way to connect with their neighbors. And, we saw stories about that trending all around the United States. And at this time, we're advising clients, hey, be a little more lenient if people are doing some special decorating. I know that yard signs are kind of the new rage for people when they celebrate a special holiday, like a happy birthday signs that are being placed in somebody's front yard, or happy anniversary, or we saw a lot for the graduations that occurred in May and June of last year. And, we advised associations be a little more lenient on that during the pandemic because these are ways to build community. And of course, as long as those signs aren't offensive. And we also took that same position when we saw the social unrest in our many different neighborhoods, and we continue to see it, that we felt that if people wanted to put a yard sign in their front yard that expressed their views on that, even though it may not have been allowed under an association documents, we felt that due to the nature of what's going on in our country right now, that association should not be cracking down and making people take those signs down. And again, thinking ahead, maybe think about having a holiday decorating contest or a best jack-o'-lantern contest for Halloween, and best maintained yard is another great one. That's a great way to get people to clean up their yards. So all these exterior decorations are a great way to bring people together. And then last, what are some social distancing activities that we've seen in communities that have been super fun? Having a driveway happy hour, where everybody comes out in their driveway and it's kind of like a block party, but you never actually go on the street. Everybody just stays in their yard. Bands on the back of trucks, going through your neighborhood, super fun. Socially distanced movie night. I know our family attended a socially distanced movie night on Friday night of this past week, and it was amazing. It was so much fun. There were about 150 people there. Everybody had a staggered time where we walked into the high school football field, and all the people were sitting on prearranged towels, and they were 12 feet apart from the other person. You could only have your family on your towel, and we watched the movie E.T., which was just so fun. It was just a great night under the stars. And then we had socially distanced leaving. We were called to leave at different times after the movie was over, and we really weren't able to have any direct contact with anybody except who was on our towel. And that was a safe way to make it a fun community event. Thinking ahead, Santa parade throughout the neighborhood would be super fun. Have somebody dress up as Santa and maybe do a Santa theme parade closer to the holidays. I know my children are at the age where booing people is really, really fun for them. And for those of you who may not know what that is that you put together like a jack-o'-lantern with candy in it, like a plastic one that you might get at Target or something. And then you put a note in it that says you've been booed, and you ask them to boo somebody else after they take the treats out. It's just kind of a fun way to start, people to have fun and to be excited about things again. And it's socially distanced, and, there's, no interaction basically if you're doing things like that. Okay, so those are some kind of fun tips on different things that you can do to bring your community together. And if anybody else has other ideas that you want to share in the comment section, I'd love to hear them. We'll make sure that we include them in our cheat sheet that we're going to be putting out on this towards the end of next week. Let's switch gears and talk about the hot topics of today in Arizona. And so the first one, of course, is going to be political signs. And what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. We've got the election coming up in November. And let's face it, this is all we hear about, right? It's the pandemic and the election, if you turn on the news right now. And so we're starting to get a ton of questions in our firm about, can people put up a flag that's politically, maybe a Make America Great Again flag, or, candidate for prison flag, or whatever. And so are those type of things protected? And what if somebody has 30 election signs on their yard? Is that okay? And how big can the sign be? So let's talk about what the law is in Arizona on political signs. And so first, let's just start out by saying that in the Condominium Act and in the Planned Communities Act in Arizona, there are specific provisions dealing with election signs and political signs. And so here's what the law in Arizona says. Community associations, so condominiums and planned communities, cannot prevent members from displaying political signs inside or outside their property, or in the case of condominiums, on any limited common element for a member's unit that touch the unit other than the roof. So for example, that may be like in their limited common element patio area, if they have a balcony. We often see political signs in condominiums and windows. And so if you live in a planned community, which is going to be like a single family home, you can place a political sign anywhere you want on your yard. If you're in a condominium, an owner can place political sign or signs anywhere in their limited common elements or in the airspace of their unit. So typically we're going to see in condos, in windows, like I said, and maybe at the front entrance of the condo if they have like a little patio courtyard, or if they have a backyard, courtyard, it could be there too. So what are some restrictions that associations can place on these political signs? And so we can place a time restriction on how long the signs are up. And so the sign restriction under the law is that the signs can be displayed no sooner than 71 days before the date of the election and no later than 3 days after. So right now, with the November election coming up, we're clearly within the window that owners can be placing multiple political signs on their lot or on, in their unit or in their limited common elements adjacent to their units. So that's important for you to know. They have the legal right to do that, and they can have multiple signs. Another thing that you need to know is that the signs don't have to be professionally made. And we can't regulate the number of candidates or issues supported or opposed on a member's political sign. So we've seen some questions recently from clients where, we get the question about, hey, this person has 3 or 4 signs, so that's okay under the law. So that's just something to think about. One thing you may want to look at is the association's regulation cannot be any more restrictive than what the city, town, or municipality has in their ordinance regulating the size and number of political signs. So if the association has a restriction on the number of signs, we have to look to make sure that it's not more restrictive than what the city, town, or county has in their ordinance. And basically just a quick check of those ordinances that we've done in preparation for this election shows that they're very lenient ordinances regarding the political signs. So basically owners are going to be allowed to have as many political signs, as they choose. Now, I haven't seen anybody with 100 yet, but they have 4 or 5. That's likely going to be acceptable under the city or town ordinance. If the city or town has no ordinance, then the association, cannot limit the size and number. But the maximum aggregate total dimensions of political signs on the member's property cannot exceed 9 square feet. And so I think the first thing is look at what your city, town, or municipality has on the number of political signs. If you have somebody that's going a little bit overboard, contact our office and we can help you navigate that. Okay, so what are some questions that I've had on political signs? We've had people that have put car tops on top of their cars and park them in the driveway of their lot, supporting or opposing, a political initiative or a candidate. And as long as it's on their property and their planned community, that's okay in my opinion. Now, you may want to check with your city, town, or county ordinances to see if that might violate that, but in the case that we had that, it did not. What about flags? We're seeing a lot of flags in support of President Trump, and then a lot of flags that are not in support of President Trump. And so, how do we handle that? Is a flag a political sign? Our firm's position is that it should be considered under the broad umbrella of a political sign. And so we are telling our clients that it doesn't matter which candidate somebody's supporting or not supporting, as long as it's making a political statement right now, and that political statement isn't offensive, like the typical example of an offensive flag would be like the Confederate flag. That would be something that we would request that the owner take that down. But right now, during this period of time where the election is coming up in November, if somebody wants to fly a flag of this nature, whether it's for Trump or Biden, we're telling clients just let them fly it, and then recognize that 3 days after the election, it's going to be crackdown time. All these political signs will need to be removed in addition to the flags that are politically also inclined. Okay, what about door-to-door activity? What if you have people that are, canvassing your neighborhood regarding political issues? Well, first, your association should have a no soliciting sign at the entrance of your community if you don't want to have solicitors coming in and out of your community. But if you don't have one of those signs, a community association cannot prohibit door-to-door political activity, such as individuals seeking support for or opposition to particular candidates or ballot issues, or circulating petitions on, different issues. And so that's important to know. The no soliciting sign is something that you would need to have posted. But we can restrict door-to-door political activity from sunset to sunrise. So you do need to know that. And we do require that canvassers wear identification that show a person's name and the candidate or ballot issue that the individual is supporting or opposing. And I don't know if any of you have had this happen, but we've seen a number of census, people going into neighborhoods trying to get information for the census. And of course, that's something that we really need everybody to comply with so that we can get the funding that we need for our cities and municipalities right now. And I think that's really pretty much covers, everything that we need to talk about on political signs. I guess our firm's position, just in closing, is that we need to be lenient right now during this time because of the state law that pertains to political signs, and we think it extends also to the political flags. And remember that 3 days after the election, all these items will need to be removed from the property. And you may want to send out a publication to your residents, maybe the day after the election, just reminding them of that. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about flags, for sale signs, and solar panels. So flags. We talked a little bit about flags a minute ago, but now let's talk about what flags are specifically allowable under Arizona law. And this is something that's really evolved over time. Now, one of the fun things about practicing in this area of the law for over 20 years is you get to see how legislation evolves over time. And I remember the year that the flag law was passed, and and then I remember the years that it was expanded and why it was expanded, and I've got some good war stories on that I'll share with you. So first, let's just get the skinny on what is the law in Arizona on display of flags in planned communities and condos. So the law is in Arizona that an association cannot prohibit the outdoor display of the American flag or an official flag of the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard by a unit or lot owner on that unit or lot owner's property. There are some additional flags that are also covered under this law, and those additional flags are the association cannot prohibit the display of the Arizona Indian Nations flag, the POW MIA flag, the Arizona state flag, the Gadsden flag, which is the Don't Tread on Me flag. All of these flags are also protected under the Planned Communities Act and the Condominium Act, and owners should be allowed to fly those flags. There are a few restrictions, though, that you do need to know about, and some of those are that planned communities are allowed to limit the number of flags to 2 flags being displayed at once, and they're also allowed to restrict the height of the flagpole to no more than the height of the rooftop on the member's home. But we cannot prohibit the installation of a flagpole in the front yard or the backyard of a member's property in a planned community. So what about in condominiums? Where can an owner display a flag? They can do that inside their window, which would be the airspace of their unit, or also they should be able to do that in a limited common area that's adjacent to their unit. So how did this law evolve? I don't know if many of you may remember, but there was a gentleman in, I believe it was Terra Vita in Scottsdale, who wanted to fly an American flag, and the association, there was some disagreement about that, and maybe the flagpole, I think, was large, and it ended up being that the very next year, then we saw that this law was passed, which protects the American flag. And homeowners should be allowed to fly that. And then it was expanded to the different armed services, and then it was expanded to the POW, MIA, the Arizona state flag, the Indian Nations flag. And then there was a situation that was in the news about the Gadsden flag and an association not allowing that, kind of when that Tea Party movement was really taking off. And then that year we saw legislation allowing the flying of the Gadsden flag. So I guess the bottom line is that these laws evolve as situations, hit the news in Arizona. And so just remember that if you're one of those associations in the future who is thinking about prohibiting something or a flag, make sure that you're reaching out to your legal counsel to get advice on what's the best way to handle the matter, especially if the media is involved. You definitely need to get advice from legal counsel, because we're here to help you through the process, and we've seen mistakes that other associations have made, and we don't want you to make those mistakes. We don't want you to be on the national news. We don't want you to be on Channel 3. And so now's the time to reach out to us if you're in one of those sticky situations, so we can give you good advice and let you know what the law says and what we think is the best way to handle any disagreements you may be having with an owner on a flag, on a political sign, or really on any other issue. Okay, let's talk about for sale and for lease signs. For sale signs are also regulated under the Planned Communities Act and the Condominium Act. And what the law says under those two acts are that regardless of what's stated in your association's declaration or bylaws or rules, an association cannot prohibit, or charge a fee for the use or placement of an indoor or outdoor display of a for sale sign or a for lease sign and a sign rider by a unit or lot owner on that owner's property, including a sign that indicates that, they're offering it for lease or, for sale. And so be mindful of that. We haven't gotten a lot of questions on that recently, but it's important for associations to know owners are allowed to place an indoor or outdoor display of a for sale sign on that owner's property. In a planned community, single-family home, obviously it's going to be really clear where their property lines are. In a condominium, it's going to be in their window, or maybe if they have a limited common element that's adjacent to their property, that's exclusive use just to them, they can put that for sale sign there. They cannot put for sale signs in a planned community or a condominium on common areas unless the association's board allows an owner to do that, and that permission should be asked for in writing, and the board should respond in writing. Now, what about Sundays when there are, well, maybe not so much anymore with the pandemic, but in the past we had, open houses on the weekends, or maybe even in March they had them every day of the week. And maybe your realtor was putting signs and balloons and this way to the open house and, directing people off the main entrance of your association. Do we have to allow that as an association? No. But your association can determine if they want to take a more lenient approach on that or if they want to be strict on that. And then you should just convey that to your residents so that they can convey it to the realtor. And if a realtor does it and you don't allow it, just be nice. Contact the realtor and just let the realtor know what your policy is on it and ask them not to do it going forward. Okay, we're right on time. Now we're going to talk our last subject, which is solar panels. And so we also have a specific law in Arizona that talks about solar panels and how associations need to treat requests by owners to install solar panels. And so first, let's start out by saying that Arizona law clearly favors the use and enjoyment of solar energy devices by owners in a community association. So any Arizona association that is considering denying an owner's request for a solar energy device on that owner's property must discuss this matter with the association's legal counsel, because these are very sticky cases, and it's very difficult for an association to deny an owner's request to place solar energy on their property. So first, what qualifies as a solar energy device? Typically what we're seeing them for are for use as to heat somebody's pool, possibly to heat up the hot water for a property. And Arizona revised statutes in the Planned Communities Act strictly prohibits planned communities from prohibiting the installation or use of a solar energy device. So we cannot prohibit the installation or use of a solar energy device in a planned community. However, planned communities may adopt rules regarding where those solar energy devices can be placed, as long as those rules do not prevent installation, impair the device's ability to function, or adversely affect the cost of the device. So planned communities cannot prevent the installation of or prohibit the installation of a solar energy device, but some things that they can do, that the board can do, is to talk with the owner about where they place it, but we can't make them place it in an area that's going to limit how well the device is going to function or make it cost so much more for the owner to run the device. Another important part that you should know about this is that if there's a lawsuit regarding a solar energy device and a homeowner and an association, that reasonable attorney's fees and costs will be awarded to the homeowner if the homeowner prevails. So again, just kind of a closing remark on solar energy devices. Make sure that if your planned community is thinking about prohibiting a solar energy device request from an owner, make sure that you're talking to your legal counsel, because there really are very few loopholes. In 99.99% of the time, the association is going to be required to allow the owner to install solar energy on their property. And we get a lot of questions about, well, do they have to do it on the roof? Well, that likely is the only place that they will be able to do it and get enough, it has to be in a certain location so that they can get enough power from the solar energy devices. So make sure you're reaching out to your legal counsel on that. Many years ago, back in year 2000, I was helping an association on a case similar to this, which is the Garden Lakes case, and that kind of outlines all the different factors that an association needs to consider if they are going to deny a solar application. And so if you're one of those associations in that position, please make sure that you're reaching out to your attorney, or I'm hoping that you're using our firm. Reach out to me, and we can give you some sound legal advice so that you don't get yourself into a pickle when dealing with a homeowner's request for a solar energy device. Okay, one last little tidbit. I always like to kind of talk about hot trends. A recent trend that we're seeing is fractional ownership of properties. Recently in the town of Paradise Valley, we have seen several owners that are listing their property as a fractional ownership. And so we've been getting questions on that in Paradise Valley and Scottsdale, and it's kind of a new trend that we're seeing. And basically the owner wants to, sell the property in such a way to maximize the amount of dollars that they get for the sale of the property. And so they're selling like 20% of the property. And, we've checked in like with the town of Paradise Valley, and they have an ordinance that prohibits that. Many of you may already have something in your documents that would prohibit that, but that's something you should keep on your radar if that's happening, because I know a lot of associations are really concerned about short-term rentals right now. And that is, very similar to the way that a timeshare is set up. And so that's something a trend that you need to be aware of and thinking about, is this happening in our community, or is this something that could happen in the future? Okay, looks like we have a lot of great questions. So I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, awesome. We've got over 12 questions, and we have 77 people watching live, which is awesome. So thanks again, everybody, for being here. Let's just move through these questions as quickly as possible. So first question from VL Noller is, are we allowed to prohibit other country flags? Okay, that's really interesting. And so under Arizona law, we talked about the flags that associations are required to allow. There's no mention that associations are required to allow, like, let's say, the flag of Ireland. No, state law does not give an owner a right to fly a flag from another country. However, you want to look at your association's documents, because sometimes your CC&Rs or your rules may have something in there that would, state that certain flags are not allowed to be flown, or only the flags that are allowed under Arizona law. So for your association, VL, I would suggest that you check your CC&Rs to see if there's any regulation on that and your rules for your association. Maybe reach out to your management company. And if there is no regulation in that document, then the owner would be allowed to fly a flag of another country. Francine, we have a regulation to keep lights by the garage on for night safety. The bulbs on several condos are blue for police and green for vets. Are these political? Should they also come down after the election? This is a first. I haven't heard that question. Okay. So I guess my question would be, how long have the lights been, blue, and how long have they been green? And is this just a temporary thing? For right now, I would probably say just let it be. Let them, continue to fly or to continue to have those different bulbs. I guess the board just has to look at, are we having complaints on this? And from my perspective, of course, we support the police and we support veterans, and I don't see any problem with it. And so, you're going to have to look at this on a case-by-case basis in your association. Neil, does the architectural committee need to have one HOA board member according to Arizona law? Yes, great question, Neil. The chair of the architectural committee under Arizona law must be a board member. So the answer to that question is yes, and that board member needs to chair the architectural committee. Karen, if the HOA has not enforced landscaping for over 10 years, is there a statute of limitations on enforcement even? What if there is a waiver or abandonment regarding enforcement? Okay, great question. So it's hard for me to give you a direct answer on this because I don't know what you mean by enforced landscaping. So if landscaping is, a weed comes after the rain, right? Or maybe the different boards enforce things differently. At first glance, I would say that landscaping it's always growing, it's an evolving situation. So I don't think that if prior boards have been more lenient on landscaping, that would prohibit or have a statute of limitations on a current board enforcing, failure to maintain landscaping. Now, where we go into arguments of waiver or abandonment or, enforcement is, let's say that somebody has had a shed on their lot for, 10 years and the CC&Rs say no sheds. Well, then, of course, we've blown it. We can't enforce that because the statute of limitations on a breach of contract is 6 years to enforce it. And it would, potentially you would have a waiver argument after 3 years of not enforcing it. The owner could make that argument, but I don't think landscaping, in my opinion, falls under that. Marty, do you have feedback about working board meetings? Boards and their community manager want to flesh out complex issues before an open board meeting to be efficient. With full adherence to open meeting laws, the day-to-day business is delayed to wait for meetings to get things done. Used to be a designated person or board president would handle minor decisions on day-to-day for low-cost items within the operating budget. Okay, so working board meetings. I'm fine with a board getting together to have a working board meeting, but that meeting needs to be noticed, just like any other board meeting. Provide 48 hours notice to the owners. You can even call it a working board meeting to flesh out the issues. And so I'm totally fine with that. Some associations do that. Usually it's the larger associations or an association maybe that has a really big issue, like a large capital improvement project where they just want to brainstorm, but it has to be in compliance with the open meeting law. Okay, we are having a virtual scavenger hunt in October. That's awesome. That was something that I had on my list that actually I forgot to add. Do you have any comments about community garage sales for single family homes? So we have been getting the question about garage sales and whether those are safe during the pandemic. So the scavenger hunt, of course, is safe because, people aren't going to be in groups doing the scavenger hunt together. It's going to be socially distant. People are going to be wearing masks. Community garage sales, really we're advising associations that that's probably not the best idea right now, just because it brings a lot of people into your community. And potentially there could be large crowds in somebody's lot for the garage sale or the estate sale. So, I think you're going to have to play that on a case-by-case basis for your association. Many associations' documents allow it, so the association may not be able to prohibit it. So we'll have to look at that on a case-by-case basis. Margie's asking, can political flags be displayed on a flagpole? So we briefly touched on that today. Yes, it's our opinion that it does fall under the large umbrella of a political sign. And, until the election is over in November, that owners should be allowed to fly political signs on a flagpole. What about political signs in homeowners' backyards? We're fine with those as well under the law pertaining to political signs. It's my opinion that an owner could place it in their backyard. We have a property manager who is supposed to be making biweekly site visits, but I do not think he is coming out since our board is not physically meeting. What is our recourse? Okay, really good question. Sometimes it's hard to pinpoint when the manager actually came to the property to do the inspection. So it sounds like your association needs to set up a protocol for how the manager checks in with the board when they do a community inspection. So some associations have the manager text a board member or email the board, all board members, with a schedule as to when they're going to be there. And then when they actually are there, they send the email saying, I'm here right now. That's a good way to, communicate when they're going to be here. I'm just noticing here, VL, that your board's not physically meeting. I hope you guys are meeting by virtual, technology. And if you need any help with that, make sure you check out our cheat sheet, which is listed on our website under our cheat sheets tab. We have a special cheat sheet just on conducting virtual meetings. Okay, another one from VL. For some community spirit events that require supplies, are they spending association money for that, or is that coming out of someone's own pocket? Great question. You'll want to look to the assessment section in your CC&Rs. Usually it's pretty broadly worded in that it can be used for, any purpose related to, the health and welfare and, anything pertaining to your community association. I mean, obviously these should be nominal charges. You shouldn't be having $5,000 worth of, spending money for supplies. So I would, as long as it's nominal and as long as the language in your documents is open-ended as to how assessment money can be used, that's something that you should be able to use association money for some of these community spirit events. Or if you don't have that, you can ask your vendors to donate. I know our firm donates frequently to annual meetings and other events. We have in the past when people were meeting more in person, if there was like a community block party or something, we would sponsor the hot dog truck or ice cream or whatever. And so you could reach out to your vendors too to help you by doing that. Our reserve study allowed for a one-time redo, which we did. Now an owner requested to inspect the first original study. Do we have to produce it? So I would say yes. If you still have a copy of it in the association's books and records, you can provide that to that person. You may want to say, hey, this has been updated, and we ask that you also look at the update too. Remember, you can charge 10 cents per page if you make a copy of that for your owner. Helen asks, if a political flag is posted, why would it be considered a political sign and not a flag variation that is not allowed by law? That's a really good question, Helen. And so, if we go back and look at the political law or political signs, section in the Planned Communities Act and the Condominium Act, it doesn't specifically say like the material that the sign has to be. It only talks about the number of signs and also the total square footage if your city, town, or municipality doesn't have any restrictions on how many signs. And so, it's our opinion that we think it's best practices to allow those political signs right now, because I don't want to get your association involved in a lawsuit where you're going to spend a ton of money fighting with an owner about whether a flag is a sign, because the message on the flag is the same message that would be on a political sign. Nancy asks, can a political sign be on the common area in front of a home? So I would say no. The only exception to that would be is if that area is directly attached to the home, and it's like a limited common element in a condominium or in a townhome where that area is, their exclusive use only. That would be a place that they could put the sign. The CC&Rs in her association, Nancy's association, say no signs on common area, and I agree with that. State law also says no political signs on the common areas. Does Arizona law override the CC&R requirement on political signs? No, it doesn't. So an owner can place a political sign on their property, or if they're in a condo, they can put it in their window, or they can put it on a limited common element that's directly attached to their unit. Mark asks, for solar, it's in our architectural guidelines to get approval first. Recently, an owner installed solar without approval. Should the HOA send a violation notice? Well, actually, that's the exact facts of the Garden Lakes case that I had back in 2000. From a practical standpoint, here's how I would suggest that you handle this. I would contact the owner who installed the solar without approval and ask them to submit an application after the fact. And then review the application with the help of your legal counsel and determine whether or not this is something that should be approved or disapproved. I can tell you from firsthand experience in that case, judges do not care, unfortunately, that the owner didn't follow the procedure to submit an application for architectural approval before the solar was installed. Of course, they had to do that under the law, and under your documents there, before any exterior modification can be made, they had to get approval. But in the case that I had, it was not at all. The judge didn't spend a lot of time on that because after the fact, after it was installed, the owner did submit an application, and they felt that even though it was after, they still did ultimately submit it. So what I would suggest to you is reach out to that owner, ask them to submit an application now, review the application. If you think you want to deny it, make sure you reach out to your legal counsel to discuss whether or not that's possible. Okay, Kim asks, what about trampolines? One neighbor says it's a nuisance. We don't specify anything in our CC&Rs about trampolines, but this owner wants us to contact her neighbor. So if your documents don't say anything about trampolines or prohibit trampolines, it's likely going to be allowable. We have to look at the nuisance or any other neighbors complaining about the trampoline, and the noise that might be associated with it. Likely what the association should do is just notify the owner with the trampoline that there has been a complaint and ask that owner to be mindful of, the noise that's coming from any residents, on the trampoline. If it continues, I'd suggest you reach out to your legal counsel and discuss what your options are. Okay, Rick Marine, one of my favorite clients. Thanks for tuning in today, Rick. Does the chair of the architectural committee have to be board members? So we just covered that a few minutes ago. Yes, the chair of the architectural review committee in an association under Arizona law must be a board member. Joan Mass Doyle, how does an HOA deal with organized crime and gang activity? Wow, I could probably teach a class on that. Well, first, you need to start really a paper trail in terms of what's going on at the property. You need to reach out to your local precinct of your police department. You need to keep a detailed log of, all the different problems that are happening in the property. And we had a case maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, where it was a renter was living in a property and there was all kinds of drug activity, gang activity. And ultimately, there was a drive-by shooting at this property. And the landlord was prosecuted by Maricopa County under a law that doesn't allow a landlord to allow criminal activity on their property. Apparently, this landlord had a history of, renting properties and not, taking action to make sure that their tenants were following the law. And so that landlord was actually prosecuted. It was surprising, and that the association was a witness in that case. So I would say reach out to your police precinct, document all of the problems, make sure that the police are doing drive-bys. If it's a landlord-tenant situation, have our firm send the landlord a letter letting them know all the possible penalties if they don't rectify the situation with the tenant. Usually the only way to rectify it is to evict the tenant. If it's an owner, we had a situation where we had an owner that was having a lot of gang activity and drug activity on the property. We have the right to fine the owner. We have the right to file a lawsuit against the owner. There's a number of different things we can do. So I would reach out to our firm to help you in that situation. Linda asks, can a board discuss issues via email? So short answer would be no. The open meeting law requires that anytime there's a deliberation of the board discussing association matters, that we have it at an open board meeting. Now, a way around that would be less than a quorum can discuss issues via email. Another workaround is if it's truly an emergency situation where the board needs to take action, and we can't wait 48 hours to notice the meeting, the board can make a decision by email only in emergency circumstances and then save those emails and read into the record at the next board meeting what exactly the emergency was and the minutes of what was decided by email. Tom asks, are you saying that a homeowner could have 50 signs on a property as long as each is no more than 9 square feet in area? Okay, so great question. So when we go back to the political signs, the maximum aggregate total dimensions is what we're going to be looking at. So I don't believe that they could actually have 50 signs. You're going to need to check with either your documents, your CC&Rs for your association, and then check with your city, town, or county ordinance on political signs. Most of them, if I remember correctly, have a square feet, I can't remember, 6 or 9 square feet total. So you're going to have, not very many signs are going to be allowed under the county, city, or municipality ordinance. And you can make a complaint with that particular city, town, or municipality if you have an owner that is, not in compliance with what their ordinance is. Okay, last question from Danelle. If a board member on a board of 3 speaks under open forum on board meeting agenda as an owner and not as a board member, is the board obligated to respond to the open forum question? The question was asking what the board was going to do on a subject matter that was already on the agenda. Okay, so I've had this situation. Actually, I've done this as a board member too. So try to cut this person a little slack. I think probably what's going on is this person maybe is feeling shut out of the process. And the best way to handle this is, of course, a board member is also a homeowner. So if a board member wants to make a statement in the open forum, they certainly can. It's unusual, but they have the right as a homeowner to do that. And what the board should do is, you're asking, is the board obligated to respond? And this really applies to any time you have a homeowner who asks a question in the open forum. If you can give a quick answer, like 30 seconds or less, and you're inclined to do so, just give a quick answer. Like, we're going to be discussing this under section 3 of the agenda. So thanks for letting us know that you're concerned about it. And we're going to be discussing that tonight. But you don't have to answer like a really long question. Like I've been to so many board meetings, probably hundreds of, thousands of, probably, I don't know, in 20 years, probably 20,000 board meetings, right? And so I've seen boards get sidetracked. And even when I was the president of my association, I got sidetracked sometimes responding to an owner in the homeowner forum. That's a really bad idea. You want to be nice, you want to be responsive, but you don't want to let the homeowner forum hijack the whole meeting. So just keep that in mind. Another good thing to say is, hey, you're welcome to stay afterwards and talk to the president or the manager about this issue, and we can give you the more time to answer the question that we need, or we'll look into that and get back to you. Another good answer. Okay, so that was it. I think we got through all the questions today, which is awesome. I'm sorry I'm about 11 minutes over, but considering the number of questions we had, I think we did pretty well today on our timing. So just some final words. I'd just like to thank you again for joining us today to learn more about how your associations can come together during the pandemic and learn more about these hot topics right now that are definitely coming up as issues in associations. Probably the hottest topic right now is going to be political signs. Just in closing, I'd like to just again say thank you so much to all the cities and towns, the neighborhood service departments that have put on this class today and that have partnered with our firm to do that. So just in closing, thank you again to the neighborhood services departments from Avondale, Chandler, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Surprise, Tempe, and the town of Queen Creek. We have 3 more great classes planned for you. The next one on October 13th, and then 2 more in October and early November as a part of this series of classes. So thanks so much for being here today. We appreciate the opportunity to answer your questions and to help you navigate these difficult times. And we hope that everybody stays safe and works on some of these community building events over the next month or so. So thanks for joining us today.
This is Bruce Wall from the City of Scottsdale's Neighborhood College Program. We're all in this together.
The City of Peoria. We're in this together.
The City of Chandler, we're in this together.
Town of Queen Creek, we're in this together.
Hi, this is Jamie from the city of Scottsdale with my daughter Jocelyn. Whether you're working from home or doing kindergarten from home, we want to remind you that we're in this together.
City of Tempe. We are in this together.